So, as I've talked about before, sometimes mostly in audio and sometimes on camera, there is a lot of, I guess you could say, very adult NFSW, erotic like stories out there, but they have a plot to them. But they're mostly fanfics or original art with original characters. And some of the people I've talked about actually do a decent job on these. Like, one I want to talk about is TroubleTRO. Now, he's been working on several stories. He's planning to, revisit some stories he's had to put a pause on because he worked on other stuff for a bit. But now he's probably going to find the time to revisit them. And one of those stories that really caught my interest when he started doing it was called Science Experiment. Now, Science Experiment is really interesting because, long story short, if you've not read it, and I do recommend Patreoning, supporting Patreoning, if you will, TroubleTRO, with the $5 tier. Because with the $5 tier, you do get access to the story. I think it's the $5 tier or the $10. I gotta check. It's one of them. But I do suggest supporting him either way. And this story is interesting because the plot line basically the introduction plot line is that you have two older women, scientists if you will, that have taken remnants of a meteorite or something that fell to Earth. It fell to Earth, and they have a piece of it, and they used it to do some experiments mostly on themselves. Well, one scientist decided they wanted to do experiments on themselves with it. So what happened, long story short, is it granted them the powers of shapeshifting, but not just any ordinary shapeshifting, where they become somebody else or maybe even temporarily become an inanimate object or vehicle. The vehicle part we'll get into in a moment though. Mainly what it allowed them to do is not only shapeshift, but become slime girls or latex slime girls of a different species, thus basically becoming immortal as well. And the reason I say latex slime, because when they fully get into it, they both dress up in, from head to toe, red latex covering the whole body, and black latex covering the whole body, basically replacing the whole body as a new body, basically. And let's just say if they got it on with each other, and I totally mean got it on, the scientists that basically the scientist that basically shaped her body into black latex, if you will, suddenly, at the moment of truth, if you know what I mean, literally exploded and collapsed in on herself as a little puddle. And the other scientist that was now was covered in all latex, red latex, I should say, was surprised by this, but then decided, hey, whatever she could do, I could do better. And then they just start having fun with each other, and then they start having, I guess you could say, very slimy, tendril-like, intimacy. But that's not all, because when they realize they're kind of confined in the area that they're in, they decide to go outwards to the parking lot via the vent, kind of racing each other, and then they land in the parking lot as two little puddles that reform and everything back into what they were. Basically now latex, slime latex drones, if you will, that have no identity, no facial features. They're just like, it's kind of like those morph suits that you now see for Halloween. Kind of like that, but more slimy latex. And the scientist in the black latex decides, you know what, we could take ours as cars, but it would be more funner if we took something new, if we created our own. And what she does is she runs right into a wall and splats, all over. It just basically collapses on herself into a big puddle that kind of reconfigures itself into a vehicle. And the scientist in the red latex decides to shapeshift into a more seductive like look, for femme fatale like look, before then going back into a liquid and using the liquid that she becomes to enter into the vehicle that the other scientist has become. A little confusing, right? A little confusing. Anyway, long story short, they decide to drive off to a location that has more space for them to have fun with and experiment with. And that's basically where the story leaves off. As I check the time here, if you hear anything, I do apologize. But like I said, that's kind of where the story leaves off. And it got me thinking exactly, what is going to happen next? Well, obviously, the next part is going to be them exploring the powers. Now, knowing how TroubleTRO is and other writers, content creators like them are, they like to expand the story a little bit before getting to that main event. But I think, honestly, in my opinion, they might be getting to that main event a lot sooner. And I think the obvious outcome is wherever they head, they could be heading to one of the scientists' apartments or to a warehouse they know that's abandoned to, really get it on with each other and see how far they can experiment with each other with their powers. But the end result that I see is something similar to what Joven 16 did with the ending, or at least the ending, the conclusion of the last chapter for the Amanda and Nicole story. And what I see is these two scientists with their new abilities, after exploring sensually together in a slimy, tendril, shape-shifting way, I see them going basically the fusion route. And if Mr. Internet Man, who's known for his Demonica series, his Mystic Makeover series, is involved, then one of the things he's always been known to do with his Demonica Veronica character is have her fuse with people that she's associated with. Either it's somebody that has identical powers as her, or somebody that might be of magic and science, or whatever the case may be. She has her fuse with them, and they become someone different. And I sense that's what's going to happen here, but I could be wrong. But again, I'd highly recommend you check out TroubleTRO. You check out his stories, they're really good. But also but most importantly, I should say, check out Science Experiment. It's a good story if you're into that kind of stuff. And to me, when you read it all the way through, it's going to get you guessing and wondering what's next. In my opinion, like I said, is the main event, if you know what I mean, is going to be, most of the story for a bit before it ends with a fusion, possibly concluding with a cliffhanger of, okay, now they're this, what's next? But again, I could be wrong, but we'll have to see. But I do recommend checking them out. They're also here on YouTube, I think under the POVRR channel. You'll see it in the link below, but I'll let you see it there. But they are here on YouTube. But I highly recommend checking out their Patreon and the stories, and mostly Science Experiment. So until next time, guys, that's all I'm going to say. And again, I highly recommend checking them out, and I am out.